Welcome back. Joining me now is Democratic Senator Alex Padilla of California. Senator Padilla, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks for having me back.
Thank you so much for being here in person. Let's start with the economy. President Trump, as I was just discussing with Kevin Hassett, his decision to fire the head of the BLS. Of course, it has prompted some backlash. You just heard Kevin Hassett defend the move. Now that the president is appointing a replacement to head the BLS, my question for you, will you trust the job numbers when they come out?
Well, and that's a big question for members of Congress who will have to confirm, members of the Senate who will have to confirm whoever Trump replaces. It's what confirmation hearings are supposed to be about. Is it going to be somebody that will maintain the independence of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, like so many other departments and agencies that need to have the independence from political pressure of the White House to do their job reliably? Or will this be another yes person for the president that's going to be more interested in propaganda than statistics, more interested in propaganda than the facts?
Well, you know, it's interesting because two former BLS commissioners wrote a letter calling on Congress actually to investigate what led to the firing of the commissioner and possibly to reverse the move. And we're even hearing some criticism from your Republican colleagues. Senator, do you think there would be enough bipartisan support to launch an investigation into the firing of the BLS commissioner? And would you support that?
Yeah, I think an investigation is certainly in order, right? Just as I've called for an investigation, by the way, on Hatch Act violations on the redistricting in Texas conversation. The example after example of Donald Trump weaponizing no longer just the Department of Justice. When he's trying to weaponize the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that tells you a lot about their insecurity about the economy. And the state of economic affairs in America, because everything that they're claiming to be true is not true. Prices are still going up. This is from a president who promised to bring prices down. And so the American people are feeling it. The impact of tariffs, $2,400 a year for working families across the country. That's the reality of tariffs.
Well, we are going to get to redistricting in just a moment. But first, I want to talk to you about another issue that you're deeply engaged in, the issue of immigration. The Trump administration is touting record low illegal crossings at the southern border. You've obviously been very critical of the president's deportation policies. You were very outspoken, for example, at a press conference of the Homeland Security Secretary wound up getting handcuffed there. But do you give President Trump credit for these record low crossings at the border?
Look, we should debate how the reduction in crossings has come about, but I think most importantly, let's look at the different pieces of what the immigration system looks like. Border security, everybody agrees we need an orderly, humane border. There's an element of people wanting to come to the United States and how those programs need to be modernized and updated. My focus has been on the people who have been here, millions of long-term residents of the United States who happen to be undocumented, that have been the target of this administration's increasingly aggressive and cruel arrest, detention, and deportation policies. If, and this is important to emphasize, they were truly only going after the dangerous, violent criminals they so often talk about, there would be no debate, there would be no discussion. But the vast majority of the people that are arresting, detaining, and even deporting, many without due process, do not have those criminal, violent convictions on their records. They're actually people who are critical to our economy.
All right, I know that debate continues, something we'll continue to track. Let's talk now about what you just brought up, the midterms, congressional maps, obviously in focus. They are usually redrawn every decade, but in Texas, as you referenced, Republicans there rolled out a new map that could actually add up to 5 GOP seats. You now have Governor Gavin Newsom promising that California would respond with a new map that would boost Democratic seats in that state. Let me ask you, Senator, do you believe it's hypocritical for Democrats to deploy the same strategy that they're criticizing by Republicans in Texas?
Well, first of all, let's understand why Donald Trump is asking for 5 more Republican seats out of Texas. It's because his policies, especially his economic policies, have been so bad, right? The prior guest referenced the big, beautiful bill. Wait till people start losing their health care and their health care costs go up, right? That if Republicans were confident on their policy agenda, they'd be eager to defend it with the people and to defend it at the ballot box next November, but they know they're in trouble. And so they're trying to rig the system to hold on to power next November. That's what this redistricting move is really about.
You know, powerful language that you're using, rig the system. I mean, some in your party warned that going down this path could actually erode trust in the system. Here's California State Assembly member Alex Lee. This is what he said. He said, quote, trying to save democracy by destroying democracy is dangerous and foolish. By legitimizing the race to the bottom of gerrymandering, Democrats will ultimately lose. Do Democrats run the risk of destroying voters' faith in the entire system, Senator?
I'll tell you what's destroying faith in the system. It's everything coming out of the White House right now. The ideal scenario, Kristen, is for Texas to stand down. They don't have to do this. They shouldn't do this. But if they were to go forward and deliver Trump his 5 additional Republican seats, that's what he's asked for, just like he asked the Georgia Secretary of State for 11,000 more votes after the 2020 election. The stakes are simply too high. The economic stakes, the state of our democracy, the health of our institutions, the checks and balances in our country. So yes, California and others are going to look at what options we have to defend what we believe America should stand for.
All right, let me talk about another recent split in your party. A lot of debate going on. Senator Cory Booker clashed with fellow Democrats over their support. Just to explain to our audience, okay, this was their support for bills that would fund police departments. Senator Booker is arguing that these bills would only reward police departments in states favored by the Trump administration. I want to play one exchange that he had with Senator Klobuchar. Get your reaction on the other side.
Sure.
You can't just pick out a few bills that came out of a committee and say, I'm going to stop those.
That is complicity with an authoritarian leader who is trashing our Constitution. It's time for Democrats to have a backbone. It's time for us to fight. It's time for us to draw lines.
Is Senator Booker's approach, where he's basically saying he's not willing to give an inch to President Trump, is that the right approach for Democrats?
Well, I think what he's doing is using his powers and opportunity as a member of the Judiciary Committee. He and I sit side by side and on the floor of the Senate to call out what this administration is doing. You know, budget reconciliation, which we went through a couple months ago, rescissions more recently, on a daily basis. The Trump administration is withholding funds in so many categories from Democratic states and Democratic cities, but not so in Republican jurisdictions. That is absolutely wrong, especially when it comes to an issue as important as public safety. So to withhold funds from New Jersey for public safety programs is dangerous.
But is his no-holds-barred approach the right one, do you think?
Look, I think the extreme way in which this administration is conducting itself calls for higher and higher profile ways of pushing back and doing right by our own constituents.
I want to ask you about the big news now for the Democratic Party and your state. Former Vice President Kamala Harris announced she will not run for election as California's governor. The move, of course, left the door open for a potential run in 2028. Here's how she explained her decision not to launch a statewide race in an interview this week. Take a look.
For now, I don't want to go back in the system. I think it's broken. I always believed that as fragile as our democracy is, our systems would be strong enough to defend our most fundamental principles. And I think right now that they're not as strong as they need to be.
She says the system is broken. That is very strong language. Do you agree? Is the system broken?
I think the system is under duress because of both the attacks of the Trump administration and the unwillingness of Republicans in Congress to stand up and do their job as a co-equal branch of government. And so what do we need to regain and strengthen the system? You know, Democrats are doing our part, trying to stand up and push back, but the people across the country are increasingly standing up and speaking up on so many things that are going wrong.
I know we got to get through 2026 first, but let me ask you about 2028. Some Democrats are starting to privately express concerns about a possible run by the former vice president. One top operative noted to Politico, quote, down ballot candidates outperformed her in 2024, and she was a drag on them. Would you encourage former Vice President Kamala Harris to run for president in 2028?
I would encourage Vice President Harris to follow her heart. And I think right now she says, okay, she's not running for governor, but she's going to spend time trying to help elect more Democrats across the country. And it should be not just for federal office, for state office, for local office. That's the best way to improve our position as Democrats for the 2028 cycle. Let's make sure we do well or very, very well in 2026.
All right, I have to ask you about the hunger crisis in Gaza turning to overseas. Last year, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, charging him with war crimes for, quote, starvation as a method of warfare, among other charges. I have to ask you, Senator, do you believe Prime Minister Netanyahu has committed war crimes?
Yeah, well, look, the situation in Gaza is absolutely heartbreaking, and it truly is a humanitarian crisis. So Israel needs to do more, and the United States, the Trump administration can and should do more to address that, absolutely.
But do you think that he's committed war crimes?
Well, let the experts conduct their research investigation and reach those conclusions. Again, what's happening in Gaza is heartbreaking. We need to be doing more, but addressing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and Israel's right to defend itself are not mutually exclusive.
You're saying the U.S. has to do more. More than half of your caucus this week, a record number, voted to block sales to some weapons to Israel. You did not, though, Senator. Why do you think the U.S. should keep sending weapons to Israel, and does that undercut your message that the U.S. should do more?
No, I don't think it does. I think we should actually focus on the humanitarian piece and move not just resolutions, but policy and investments accordingly. What the resolution spoke to is much broader than just Israel and Gaza in those negotiations, because as you know, Israel's under constant threat from Hamas still, from Hezbollah, from the Houthis, from Iran on a more broader level. And so we need to try to do what we can to maintain the security and stability of the region and address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Senator Alex Padilla, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.